Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hi, I'm Rory, and with me is Ken. How are you, Ken?
Exceptionally well, Rory. Glad to be here. And we're back to our regular, scheduled programming. This is episode 146. You've joined us on the Counselling Tutor Podcast. We've got 3 topics for you today. We're going to be kicking off speaking about transferring your counselling skills to online work. So many people affected, maybe with the outcomes of Corona, with lockdown, not able to see clients face to face. So we're going to be covering what working online looks like and over the telephone. Then we have our regular slot of check-in with CPCAB, where, Rory, you had a chat with Kelly Budd regarding complaints.
Yes, sadly, sometimes in counselling courses, students, have difficulties and need to make a complaint. And Kelly accurately tells us which route to go down, what CPCAB can deal with, and what should be dealt with via your centre.
Looking forward to that one. And then we end episode 146 today with Practice Matters, where you spoke with Samantha Davies on ADHD. Can you kind of give us a little bit of what we can expect from that? Yes,
Samantha Davies talks about working with clients with ADHD, which of course is difficulties with attention, and some techniques and some observations on how to work with a client group that may not be able to focus down for too long because of their neurology. It's interesting and really essential if you're working with anyone in this client group. And the other thing I'd say is that we don't always know. It becomes apparent sometimes through the arc of therapy that our clients are neurodiverse.
Looking forward to that one. So let's start off with our first topic today, which is transferring your counselling skills to work online. I think, Rory, that's probably the hottest topic, certainly on our Facebook group at the moment.
It is. I mean, we're living in absolutely extraordinary times at the time of broadcast with the COVID-19 epidemic. And we've seen therapists, both in private practice and students, having to literally stop face-to-face work because of the risk element. And as a consequence, people have decided to harness technology and go online and develop their practice and continue their practice online. But of course, this kind of transferring onto an online environment brings with it its own challenges. It needs further training, and it needs further kind of self-awareness, because there are differences between working face-to-face and online, as we know, Ken.
We do indeed. And I guess when you consider online work at first, and that can, when we say online, it is anything connected to a line. So that can be the telephone, it can be your mobile, which is, I guess, a virtual connection online, or it could be video conferencing. It might even just be email, where you're emailing a client and they're emailing you back. At first glance, it could appear that the biggest obstacle to working online is getting your head around the technology. But it's really interesting what you say, Rory, in that there's so much else to consider apart from the technology. The technology really takes a back seat on this. The technology is something you learn once, you can use it, and away you go. But things like confidentiality come into question here, and how we manage and store a client's data, because by the very nature of working online leaves a digital fingerprint. It does. It leaves a little footprint which is traceable. So even sending an email to a potential client, we are collecting data or leaving a data print in some way, and we need to consider it in our practice to protect our practice and, of course, our clients.
Yes, and I think it's brought into sharp relief the need for some practitioners to register with the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, because certainly here in the UK, we work under the what was the Data Protection Act, and we work under the legislation regarding it's actually called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations, and part of that is anybody who's handling or storing data may need to consider enrolling or signing up and joining the ICO because it's a legal requirement. So I think there's a lot of therapists who may have not really thought that they had to join and now realise that they actually have to because it's a legal obligation. The other thing I think that online working brings is a different psychological form of contact. There's a number of theories that people have studied online counselling really need to know because it can bring out certain kind of presentations and behaviours in both clients and counsellors that you need to be aware of. So there's an area, I think, of personal development that needs to be addressed when you go online.
There is. And I guess it starts with looking at what your relationship is with technology, what that feels like for you, understanding what your client's relationship is with technology, how comfortable they feel. If you're moving from face-to-face to online because of necessity, because of maybe isolation and lockdown, it's about how is that placed in front of your client? Is it placed in front of your client as, oh, well, you know what, we can't work face-to-face anymore, we're going to have to go online. It almost feels like second best in the way that it's been framed. So there's so much to consider, as you say, Rory, from a personal perspective, but also from a professional and ethical perspective. And when we spoke about data protection, the ACO, the handling of data, that's a non-negotiable. We're talking about legislation here. This is not something we can discuss and debate, and I do it this way and you do it that way, Rory. We have to follow the letter of the law when it comes to that. But there are, I guess, other elements when we look at ethics. If you look to whoever your ethical body is, they will undoubtedly have something around online counselling or telephone counselling. And very often, if you're working to an ethical framework, the ethical framework will differ for face-to-face work to working online. And we need to take that into consideration to make sure we have the core competencies in place to be able to work safely in service of our clients, and of course protecting ourselves and our practice.
Absolutely. And if we're working on the telephone, I know a lot of counsellors have moved to telephone counselling. How do you show empathy? How do you show congruence? How do you show unconditional positive regard with the lack of seeing the client and the client seeing you? It's a real challenge, and there are techniques that can be used. But they need to be taught and learned. And I guess the other thing is that you are quite, as Ken has kind of alluded to, you're moving into someone else's home, because if you're doing a video online therapy session, then they're seeing your home or where you're working, and you're seeing the client's home. How does that feel? There is so much to consider. It is just not a case of plugging your computer in or dialing a number. There's just so many elements that until they're pointed out, people really don't know.
Yeah, we kind of received a torrent. It was seriously almost a tsunami of messages on our Facebook group and via email as well. And for that very reason, Rory and I stopped kind of business as usual in Counselling Tutor. We focused all our efforts onto creating a online and telephone counselling course that has gone live and has been, I guess, beta tested or early adopter tested by over 900 counsellors, psychotherapists from all around the world. We're getting feedback, literally hundreds, Rory, of emails of people on this course talking about what a transformation it is for them, how much they learned, how it differs so much from what they expected. And I want to make this very clear. This is not a punt to try and sell our course. It's not the way that we do things. If you've been following the Counselling Tutor podcast, you'll know that by now. So what we did with the building of the course is we brought our team together, and that is the team of Counselling Tutor. That's 6 strong of full-time employees, but we also consulted with external providers and brought in their expertise as well to build this course. And without doubt, our team and external providers either gave their time free of charge, or our salaried providers gave more hours of their time for the same kind of money. And the reason for that was so that we could build a concession course. And what I mean by concession is not discounted course, it's concession. It's to match the time we find ourselves in at the moment. We're able to get that course out for just £49.99, and that's over 30 hours of guided training, self-directed videos. There's a supportive group and community where you're working with a buddy. So over 30 hours of CPD for just $49.99. If you're interested in that, of course, the details can be found at our website, which is counsellingtutor.com.
Yes, and you talked about the feedback we've had. A lot of people have thanked us and said, that they've had to change. They've had to change the way they work, and the course has been very supportive in that, because there are things that you really do need to know. It isn't, as I said, it's just not a case of plugging your computer in or phoning someone up. There is specific ways of working and specific theories that underpin online, and we cover also email and text as well as phone and video. And I think I'd like to take the opportunity to give a shout out actually to our team, because they have worked incredibly hard, long hours, just to build this, just to support people. And it was built because people asked us, people emailed us and said, well, we're going to go online, but we need some support. Can you help? And we said, of course we can. And that's what we did. We made a course to support people. And I'm particularly struck by the testimonials we've had from people around the world. We've worked in areas that we would never have really thought of, with great respect. And people have come back to us and said, 25, 30, 40 of our staff are now being taught by you. So, and it's the world we're going to go into. My view, and I don't know what you think, Ken, is that when we come out of this wretched situation we find ourselves in, the online therapy will come of age. It will be a mixed economy, and some therapists will work solely online. Some will work in a mixed way, face-to-face. Some will probably choose to go back to face-to-face, but it isn't going to go away. It's going to be another aspect to the canvas of counselling, and it's come of age.
It is, and I think back, Rory, I did a postgraduate certificate in online and telephone counselling back in 2012, and I did it as an opportunity to grow my business. And when we look at this today, it is no longer an opportunity, it is now a necessity to work online with clients. And we're in this boat internationally. So often we'll speak about topics here on Counselling Tutor, and then we refer to how it is here in the UK, because that's where we're based and that's where we make this from. But as you quite rightly said, Rory, this is international. It really is. It is spread worldwide, and literally tens of thousands of clients that really need to see their counsellors are unable to do so because of isolation, because you can't come face to face at a time of lockdown, which is, as you said, Rory, where we find ourselves at the time of this broadcast. So it's gone from being, oh, that's a great opportunity, I can maybe grow my business into an area, to an absolute necessity. If you want to continue working with your clients, supporting those clients. And Rory, as we're seeing the sad information coming out from the news, is that mental health is deteriorating during this time of isolation, and understandably so. So hopefully this course, and of course there are other courses available, Rory, as you'll know, but it is in service of clients, really. So I guess not much more to say on that, other than if you're interested, go to counsellingtutor.com. Right there on the homepage, we've got information. If you are looking to change your face-to-face skills to online working, the course is there for you. So as we move away from online and back to the business of study, Rory, and I guess CPCAB being one of the awarding bodies here in the United Kingdom, work in the same way as we do in counselling. If you've got a client, your client, you should have a very transparent and clear complaint procedure should your client feel unhappy. And you spoke with Kelly Budd at CPCAB, and they reflect that in that they have a transparent complaints procedure as well.
Absolutely, Ken. Always a pleasure speaking with the wonderful Kelly Budd over at CPCAB. And one of the things that you'll hear us speak about is which area the complaint needs to be sent to. There are different areas and different kind of procedures depending on what the content of the complaint is. Some are handled by the agency themselves or your college, whoever's teaching you, and some are handled by CPCAB. And Kelly outlines the differences and how CPCAB work with complaints.
Without any further ado, let's check in with CPCAB.
Check in with CPCAB.
And we're here with Kelly, and Kelly's going to be talking about that kind of very difficult area, complaints, people wanting to make a complaint. So what's your thoughts on that, Kelly?
Well, Rory, I think it's a really interesting area to go through and kind of discuss with you today. We understand that obviously we would love for counselling teaching to be a perfect kind of flawless process in some ways. But I think it's quite important to talk about what's appropriate to do if things do start to go wrong or students aren't having the experience that they expected or that they wanted. And as an awarding body, kind of CPCAB, we do get phone calls and we get email inquiries kind of asking, can I make a complaint about this? Who do I make a complaint to? And it seems to be a real grey area where people really don't know kind of what sort of process to follow in order to get the best outcome for them. So I thought it would be something quite useful to talk about.
Okay, and I guess there's many areas of complaints, isn't there? So if we just take one maybe at a time. The first one is a student isn't happy with the teaching on their course. They feel that either the teaching or the tutor isn't up to scratch, shall we say?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's the best place to forward a complaint there?
I think that's a really interesting one. And when CPCAB review the kind of complaints that come to our doorstep as an awarding body, it is the most common complaint. Students saying that they have had a breakdown of relationship with their tutor, or there's a kind of interpersonal conflict in the classroom that they can't quite kind of get a handle on. From our point of view, it's very, very important that that's addressed at a centre level first. So as an awarding body, we're not the employer of your tutor, and the kind of learning experience in the classroom is really something that is designed and kind of delivered by the centre. So an informal route is always the best kind of initial option with that. We really would love as counselling trainees for you to be able to voice the kind of the I experience of I am not experiencing this classroom the way I want it to be. I have real difficulty when you say this to me or to other people in the classroom, and to really kind of own that experience, and if possible voice it to the person that you've got the difficulty with first, with support if you need to, but almost certainly that would be something that's a centre level complaint. The kind of the relationship with your tutor, the relationship with the learning experience in that sense is very much something that a centre has a procedure and a kind of process that they will go through to resolve and mediate any concern of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Kelly, that sometimes issues can be down to miscommunication or misunderstanding. So on the first instance, I think it's about maybe speaking to your tutor on a one-to-one level and just talking to your tutor. And it could be it's just pure miscommunication. And the other thing is, of course, is that certainly in the higher levels, people are moving into professional life. They're face to face with clients. There's a expectation that they will abide by both the spirit and the ethics of what counselling is. And sometimes tutors, and I know I've had to do this in the past, not made myself very popular by challenging people, things like not turning up to class enough, not turning up on time, maybe being disrespectful, and that should be done very thoughtfully by a tutor. And centres do have, and I can share this with people, if you're at a college or a university, a government-funded organisation, you have a class rep. You should at the beginning of the year be asked to have a class representative who people could go to, and then they can come to the tutor in the first instance and say, these are the things that we like and these are the things that we do anything about. Also, there's learner voice, where that particular representative will go to a group of managers within the education setting and bring any issues, and that's done. It's called learner voice. I have to say, it doesn't always pan out that way, but there is a policy and a procedure for complaints, and it should be, as you say, first levelled at the tutor and then the tutor's employers.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that by the very nature of as you said, in the counselling classroom, it can be a very, very challenging environment, and it should be. I said at the beginning we would love for the process to be flawless. In a way, the interpersonal kind of work in the classroom and the potential kind of ruptures and conflicts that can come from that are sometimes the most valuable part of the training. Learning how to deal with ruptures and kind of abrasive interactions in the counselling relationship is one of the key indicators, research has shown, for really positive client outcomes. If you're able to interpersonally work with the client through a difficulty, you are going to be a better counsellor. So this is possibly the best opportunity to start to learn how to do that in a really proactive, really kind of dynamic way, and take ownership of your part in it and really kind of work with what's presented to you rather than see it as kind of a failing or a flaw in the process.
Yes, I'd totally agree with that. I think sometimes there's an idea that everything's a bit ethereal in counselling training, and everybody's a bit, and I'm going to be not very politically correct, a bit loved up maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are aspects of that, and I've been in groups where that has been quite clearly present, but that isn't always the case. Any group is made up of a group of individuals that are sum total of the whole. And occasionally you will get conflicts. It's how you manage them.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah. And if you are able to do that, I know it can be really difficult. And sometimes there'll be situations that you should take higher. I'm not dismissing those at all. There should be situations that your centre or an awarding body need to deal with. But actually, if the situation is something that you can deal with yourself, you will end up being the better counsellor for it, for being able to talk to that peer in your class that you are really being challenged by or that you don't get on with. It's better to have a few people in the group that you've got differences with, because if everybody were loved up, as you said, you wouldn't learn much from it. It would be lovely, but you wouldn't learn much.
No, I know my gosh, when you get into the real world, you are going to meet people who disagree with you. I want to pick up on just a point where you said that there are some areas where you as an awarding body may get involved in. What would those areas specifically be?
As an awarding body, CPCAB will deal directly with complaints that relate to malpractice or maladministration of the qualification. So that might be an issuing of an invalid certificate, something like that. So essentially, if the validity of the qualification is at stake, complaints directly about CPCAB is something that we have done. Usually they would be from a centre or somebody we have a personal interaction with. But we will also review a centre complaint once it's been through the full centre process. One thing that we do is we ensure that every CPCAB centre has a clear and robust complaint policy that's available to students. Once a student has exceeded exhausted that process, and if they get to the end of it and they still don't feel they've got a satisfactory outcome, then they can bring it to us and we will go and look at that and check that the centre really did follow that whole process to the letter of the law or the letter of their policy. So we make sure that the students had a fair run and been able to really voice what their concern was and had that attended to. But we can't intervene directly with the individual kind of student complaint.
No, so the message, I guess, as we're coming to the end of this little interview, is that if you have a difficulty, see a tutor first. If it's not resolved, then escalate it. Maybe take it to their manager or take it to the senior leadership team, which would be the principal or the owner if it's an independent organisation. And if it's not resolved there, then maybe it's the time just to speak with you as the awarding body, but you're limited in what you can do. You'll be going back and saying, well, has that been dealt with by the policies and the procedures?
Yeah, if they feel that they haven't been offered the full kind of complaints process, then we were able to step in, we'll go to the centre and say, make your policy available to this student, take them through, go through the mediation process or whatever it is specifically that they're offering. So we make sure that that's put in place for a student. And if then you get to the end, then come to us.
Well, I mean, I think that's just been super helpful, super clear. And also, if there is anybody out there listening who, feels they're not happy with their studies or the way they're being treated, I think voice it. It. Sometimes, in my experience as a tutor, it can be just miscommunication. And sitting down with someone and saying, I think you think this of me, actually isn't the case. And, I'm not saying that every complaint's invalid, but sometimes they can be resolved at that level before it escalates and people kind of dig in, become a bit entrenched.
Sometimes it's one simple piece of information that's missing or something that's been misconstrued, and just that little nugget is what often resolves the situation. So do everything you can at that level first. And we hope that means that you'll be able to really enjoy your studies rather than kind of feel caught up in that process.
Fab observations, Kelly, as always, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Rory. See you soon.
Check-in with CPCAB is proudly sponsored by CPCAB, the only awarding body run by counsellors for counsellors. To learn more about CPCAB qualifications and to get more detailed information on today's podcast topic, visit cpcab.co.uk.
Well, I hope that the phones at awarding bodies are going to be less ringy now with complaints, now that Kelly's outlined what kind of complaints that awarding bodies deal with. And now, having listened to Kelly, exactly the structure and where to go should you have to make a complaint about the course or your course provider. As I say, it doesn't happen often. But at the end of the day, you guys are customers. You're paying lots and lots and lots of money to train. And if you're not getting the service that you're receiving, then you have the right to redress. So I hope that's cleared it up and it gives you real clear insight into where to level any complaint or objection.
Yeah, I think that's a really a good topic for us to have covered. I recognise from kind of my supervision role in supervising placement counsellors, there are at times counsellors that are still studying that will come in and have grumbles about how their course is going. And I don't think that it is widely known that you have routes to complain. In the same way as a client that comes to us as a counsellor or a psychotherapist has a route to complain. And I think it makes things transparent and it raises the bar for everyone. So thank you very much, Rory, and of course, Kelly, for that very interesting topic today. We move away from study into what we call practice matters, where we delve into private practice, what we may encounter in private practice. And we have set up a provision for qualified practitioners called Counsellor CPD. You can go and look at that. It's counsellorcpd.com, where we provide on-demand, on-topic CPD training. It's kind of it's like your favorite television streaming service like Netflix or whatever that may be. The only difference is the topic is all counselling related, and they are all academically sound and checked by our academic director, Rory, to make sure that there are learning outcomes, and they are all certified as well. But Rory, you spoke to one of our lecturers, Samantha Davies, on clients with ADHD, and this is a topic I think we really need to all look at today. In this day and age, we're talking about neurodiversity. You've got the neurotypical, but ADHD falls under neurodiversity, and it's something we need to understand, embrace, and know how to work with.
Yes, absolutely. And as you say, we live in a neurodiverse world, Ken. We are neurodiverse. I'm dyslexic, which makes me neurodiverse, and there's more of us than we might think about. And ADHD is a particularly challenging environment for someone who's counselling, because by its very nature, attention spans are low. And Kelly Samantha really outlines ways of working with clients who may have short attention spans, and to give them the best service, because they deserve the best service too. And it just comes down again to working with the client, working where the client is. And she does a brilliant job of outlining that and gives some really solid examples.
Let's get straight into Practice Matters.
Practice Matters.
And we welcome Samantha Davies, who's one of our CPD presenters. So welcome, Sam.
Hello. Hi.
And you produced a really interesting lecture on ADHD. So just wonder, as we start, would you like to outline what those letters mean? We hear it a lot, but what actually does it mean?
Okay, so thank you for your kind words there as well. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Some people would say that ADHD is something that has been misnamed because we often think of ADHD as hyperactive children with an attention deficit. And it also, we have sub-frames of ADHD as well. We also have ADD without the hyperactivity. And we have combined, which is ADHD and ADD together. So that's basically what it stands for.
So that's really helpful. It seems to me that it's not just one particular kind of presentation of kind of behaviours or the way people live in the world, but there's a bit of a spectrum. Would it be fair to say there's a spectrum? So you counsel people with ADHD or people on this particular spectrum. What would you say were the particular challenges clients may face when going for therapy who've got ADHD?
That's a really good question. What I've found through both personal experience and whilst doing research on this subject is that often when you come into a counselling situation, counsellors are taught to sort of watch the client's body language, watch how the client's interacting. And if you've got a client with ADHD, there may be reactions from that client that would be completely different because of the ADHD. I'll give you an example. When I went into counselling myself, I have a habit because I have ADHD, and I have a habit of wagging my legs. My legs never stop. It's like a motor. People with ADHD describe it as an internal motor that doesn't stop. So my leg will wag on the floor at quite a high speed. You've probably seen people do that. And quite often I'll have my hands on my lap and I'll twiddle my thumbs at the same time. Now, when you're a counsellor and you have somebody in front of you, if they are wagging their leg and their fingers are tapping away and they don't look as though they're sitting still and they're squirming about in the seat, in somebody without ADHD, this could be interpreted as, somebody being very anxious, somebody not fully relaxing or engaging. With somebody with ADHD, it can literally just be their internal motor, and actually they're quite relaxed.
Yes.
And, that's just one example.
Yeah, so they can just be ticking over like a car, but that's just how they are. So I'm guessing in cases like that, it'd be really easy for therapists to maybe focus on those as a symptom of a problem, as opposed to realising that's just their natural way of being. Yeah,
and one of the other things that I think is really important to take into consideration is ADHD have great difficulty with their working memory. And this can mean that remembering appointments can be very difficult, turning up on time can be very difficult. So again, referring back to sort of personally, in my first ever block of counselling sessions, I think we were working on a 12 weeks. I think my 12 weeks took me a little bit longer than 12 weeks because I had completely and utterly, and I mean, when I say completely and utterly, I mean, I knew that morning I'd got counselling at 12 o'clock. By 11:30, I'd agreed to go shopping with my friends, and it wasn't until later that evening I remembered I got counselling. Twice I did that, and not only that, but because of double booking myself, because I would never write memory, I also had to rearrange a couple of my sessions. Now, this was before I realised that I had ADHD, and my counsellor wrote me a lovely little sort of piece of paper with all the times I'd cancelled or missed things, and wanted to explore, was this me avoiding things? What was I avoiding? Why was I putting my appointments to the side? And actually, it was just my ADHD, my poor working memory.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, and it's one of the things that you are going to explore in this really, really not to be missed lecture on, neurodiversity, because we really are working in the realms of diversity here, because
Yes.
people are neurologically different. And your counsellor, it sounds like, well, meaning though he or she was, fell into the trap of seeing your ADHD as, in fact, avoidance.
Yeah. I hear from a lot of my clients that this happens a lot of the time. When I'm working with my ADHD clients, the thing that stands out quite often to me is the fact that although they've been diagnosed with ADHD, most clients don't even actually know what their ADHD fully is. So, I do spend a little bit of time with, psychoeducation of ADHD, and I find that is really important. Not to say that all counsellors have to have a massive knowledge, but a little bit of understanding can be very useful.
Yes, and I think that really kind of highlights why your lecture is so important, because without someone knowing about neurodiversity, and the thing is, diversity isn't always apparent. That's one of the things I've said for a long time. Just because someone looks like you doesn't mean they are like you. So,
exactly, yeah.
Yes, so it's going to be very, very useful, I think, for people to understand, maybe not to make assumptions. And it's interesting that the kind of assumptions you talked about are those that sometimes we're asked to consider in training.
Yeah. And I think that was when I first started to realize that, with, alongside my own training and alongside starting to research ADHD, I could see that there was a little bit of a, I can't think of the word, like an overlap there that needed to be sort of explored a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you hope that people will get from this lecture that you've delivered? What do you hope that practitioners may take away from it?
I suppose to educate. I mean, we know with CPD, and education is really important. But to not presume, I suppose, and to use your questioning, I suppose, sometimes. If you have a client that comes to you that mentions that they have ADHD, what is useful to take away from the CPD that I've done is that little bit of knowledge that you can share with them, because they may not understand their own ADHD, but also hopefully can give you a little bit more of an understanding of some of the ways that they may or may not respond that can be misread.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you've really eloquently kind of explored at least one misreading where maybe things like the poor working memory and missed attendance could be seen as avoidance. And also, we talked a little bit off recording in the preamble before we press the record button about sometimes, using very interesting therapeutic tools. You talked about using a dog in the therapy room to regulate the clients so that they felt that they were regulated enough. So I'm guessing that sometimes when you work with this, you have to be a bit creative.
Yeah, definitely. I think that when I'm working with my ADHD clients, there's lots of different ways I work with them. Not only, we were talking about earlier that I've got a lovely boxer, I'm going to call Khaleesi, who is now starting to work with my ADHD clients. She's had her debut. That obviously, the ADHD clients that work with them are teenage boys that I've got at the moment, and they'll get down on the floor and roll about with her, and they're kind of fighting with her more or less and playing with her whilst opening up and talking. And what that does is it highlights the need sometimes for people with ADHD to have something else to do whilst they're talking. I use little fidget toys. We might sit and play Jenga. I'm trying to think. I've got a Rubik's Cube on my table. I've got having something to do with your hands, or even, actually, I had one client that she would have felt pens and she would colour or doodle whilst talking to me, because it's that energy in somebody, especially with the hyperactive element of ADHD. They need to keep that energy and that themselves moving whilst they can talk. So although that could look like somebody being distracted in if they were neurotypical, with somebody with ADHD, actually that's their way of keeping that energy entertained whilst they can open up.
Well, I think this has been a tantalising little taster of the wonderful world of neurodiversity, in particular working with clients with ADHD or on that particular spectrum. I'm sure that anybody who watches this CPD lecture is going to get huge amounts of information in service of the client. So Samantha, Sam Davies, thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Rory, and thank you to Samantha for that topic. So informative. And again, it just brings up again and again for me, Rory, how important it is as practitioners to continuously develop your learning for your practice. And of course, if you're interested in our CPD provision, you can go to counselorcpd.com, where we have on-demand lectures, including the lecture from Samantha on clients with ADHD. And I guess, Rory, that brings us to the end of episode 146.
And it's been a rather full episode, if I do say so myself. We started off with transferring your skills or your practice online. Then we moved to check-in with CPCAB, and we heard from Kelly Budd regarding complaints and which area complaints need to be sent to, should they arise. And then we had Samantha Davies talking about working with clients with ADHD. It's quite a comprehensive episode. And my message to you out there is stay grounded, stay safe, and look after each other.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.